Are you ready to overcome the complexities and burdens that come with your success? Join the team at Centura Wealth Advisory in the Live Life Liberated podcast. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Live Life Liberated with the team from Centura Wealth Advisory. Today, Myron has a special guest on, and that is Eliot Peters. Eliot is the Managing Director of RA Capital Advisors. Mr. Peters plays a key role in the firm's strategic direction and execution of client engagements. RA Capital focuses its efforts in M&A activity for the small to medium-sized privately held business. Derek, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Eric.
Fantastic. You brought Eliot on the show today. Why'd you bring him on?
There is lots of activity happening in the M&A field today, and Eliot pays his firm is key to that to many business owners, and I thought he could shed some real light on what's going on out there and really inform our audience. So, Eliot, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So, you guys are busy. Really busy.
We are. Yeah. No, we probably our busiest quarter ever in Q4.
Yeah.
No, it's two-thirds of our transaction volumes closed in Q4, including two in the very last week of the year. So I didn't even make the New Year's ball drop. I dropped around 8 p.m. when we closed our last deal.
Wow, that's exciting. Well, Eliot, why don't you tell our audience about your background and experience and education?
I'm actually an accountant by background. I'm a CPA. I went to undergrad at UC Santa Barbara. They have a terrific accounting program there. After that, I worked with Arthur Andersen and Ernst & Young in various audit roles. And did that for about 3.5 years. And for the last 17 years, I've been working at RA Capital, and now I'm one of the managing directors and really kind of lead the day-to-day execution. And our experience has been pretty vast. We're a 32-year-old boutique investment bank. And so I lead M&A transactions. We typically will close between 5 and 7 transactions a year through a variety of industries. And we've had terrific experience with a lot of different companies working through challenges and family transitions and in M&A, and also sometimes in other types of family transitions.
So it sounds like you have too much personality to be hanging out with accountants and auditors. What led for the change that you left the accounting industry to get to M&A?
Yeah, well, I think that might have been one of it, and I can thank some of my UCSB roots for that. It's a very social school, and really kind of taught you to you live in 1 square mile with a lot of folks. But what I do is it's really rewarding, and you get to meet a lot of people, deal with a lot of challenges, and it takes a little personality to kind of get inside both the owner dynamics, the family dynamics, but also on the other side you got to understand the buyer dynamics, the investor dynamics, and really try to understand what's driving folks. And so I think one of the big misconceptions about investment banking, it's all people buried in spreadsheets. It's not. I spend 80% of my day talking to people over Zoom, on the phone, and in meetings, in prior times. But you really need to listen and think on your feet and be creative with solutions a lot of times. So I think it was a really good fit with having that background to understand what makes a business tick by going through kind of a boot camp of auditing, but kind of use some of my personal skills to kind of apply that to problem solving and project management.
Yeah, so you're saying there's both science and art to putting together an M&A deal, because there's, especially closely held businesses, there's a lot of emotions and a lot of different sacred cows, and how do we get all of these different competing goals met to find the right solution for a business owner? Totally agree. Tell me, who do you guys serve? Tell me who your ideal clients. What do you guys specialize in? The size of businesses. What do they look like?
Yeah, most of our clients are family held or entrepreneur led businesses. 10 to really 200 or more million in revenue. On the technology side, we've worked with companies as small as $3 million if they have annual recurring revenue in that range. But I'd say for the most of them that we deal with, I'd say if you said what 70% of our transactions are probably companies with 25 to 100 million of revenue.
Okay, and what kind of bottom line EBITDA do they normally have?
Yeah. Normally, and really, kind of this is what I call kind of institutional minimums, and by that, where a lot of the private equity community and the larger strategics get interested. They're really looking for kind of 2 to 3 million of EBITDA, if it's a kind of a more traditional industry, or again, if it's a software as a service type business, kind of the institutional minimums are right around 3 million of annual recurring revenue.
Okay. So the size of transactions, what's the minimum and the upper bound for your guys' firm? What kind of size do you guys normally see as far as a sale value?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked on transactions that are $500 million, and we like to say there's no upper bound. The irony is a lot of times the larger the transaction, different complexities, but there's a lot more systems within the companies. But because we focus on the family-led companies, there's just not a lot of them that kind of reach that size range. So probably in the last 7 years, we've done 3 transactions that are north of $250 million. All the rest are kind of in the size ranges we talked about.
Okay, and the lower bound is how small
Yeah.
of a transaction?
Yeah, probably around $15 million.
Okay. And are you guys exclusively on the sell side, or do you guys represent both buyers and sellers?
We exclusively represent, or nearly exclusively represent, family-owned companies, and typically they're sellers, not buyers. So we don't try to go out and represent who would be buyers of our eventual clients, and that really kind of keeps us independent. That's one of our value propositions is we want to really be kind of an independent advocate for these families, because they're this transaction is just very, very, very important for them, life changing in a lot of ways. And so we really want to be someone that can be as free as conflicts as possible. So typically that drives to the sell side. So I think over the last 5 years, it's been about 80% sell side, maybe one buy side, and the rest raising capital, also for family-led companies.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. So you guys do help and do a fair bit of raising capital on the debt side for these companies as well.
Yeah, no, both on the debt and the equity side. And I think what's interesting is, because of how much liquidity there is in the markets, there's a lot of times I've talked myself out of sell side engagements when I explain to a family that they don't have to sell the company to get a 30% owner out. There's a lot of solutions in the kind of non-bank financing world or the non-control equity world that can really help some transitions where there's multiple owners. So we try to take a pretty objective approach depending on what the owners want to do, and some of those solutions can be pretty eloquent and find a solution that that people weren't even aware of, and it's really been the last 5 years some of these strategies have come through from the private equity community. So it's pretty exciting to talk about with families, and as much as on our side, you don't like to see a sell side go away. When you can tell a family that they don't have to sell their business in order to get their uncle out of it, it's pretty rewarding and tends to lead to a much longer client relationship.
That's great. Well, why don't you talk about the macro forces at play today in the current M&A landscape?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty interesting world right now. As I said, we had a really busy fourth quarter, and that we weren't alone in that sense. I mean, COVID. A lot of people expected that was just going to shut down M&A, and they were right for about 3 months. But what's happened is interest rates have just gone down near to zero, as we all know, and so there's just more and more money pouring into alternative investments, which in our case is the private equity community. And so these firms, they've gotten, over the last 10 years, they've gotten almost 3 times as much money as they had before. They're projected to have double under management 5 years from now. And so what it's doing, it's just creating this buyer universe that is just vast and diverse and much more so before. And it's not just kind of pure private equity firms. They're buying companies. On average now, each company a private equity firm buys makes 2 to 3 add-on acquisitions. So you're kind of creating this universe of strategic buyers every day as these companies go. And so what that does for us is when we go to market, we're just finding a much deeper pool of buyers. And a lot of times, especially when you're talking about family-owned companies or entrepreneur-led companies, that universe isn't changing at the same rate. And so it's creating this scarcity and mismatch of supply and demand where people are really looking for and hoping to seek out and purchase these companies. And it's giving our clients a lot of leverage and some pretty attractive valuations.
I bet. Are you seeing 2 to 3 times as big of audience pool, or how much bigger is it for these businesses that are taking their business to market?
I think last count, there was 5,000 private equity firms just in the United States, plus all the strategic buyers. So honestly, we're limiting our buyers universe, and it's really being more selective. And so I'd say it's hard to say how much bigger the pool is, but maybe if I was going to think 10 years ago, if I was looking at a company and said, maybe there's 3 or 4 buyers here. Yeah, now there's 12 that are strategic or private equity backed, and then again, once you're kind of at the institutional minimums, you have some subset of the whole 5,000 universe of standalone firms to choose from as well. So it's hard to say if it's 2 or 3 times. I probably make the argument it's 10 times. So some of the challenge actually is picking how best to go to market. We've done transactions, we've gone to 10 folks, and we've done ones where we went to 300. And really it's about how do we effectively make a market for the company. And I think what's most surprising is we're wrong as many times as we're right about who the eventual buyer will be. And so what I mean is that a lot of times people say, hey, look, this company, they got to be the buyer. It makes all the sense in the world. You never know what's going on with that company. They could have just digested a big acquisition, changed CEOs, redone their debt, I call it be on deal restriction, where their board, something happened and their board just doesn't want them doing deals. And then you might have a company or a firm you've never heard of that all of a sudden did a few acquisitions, and they're just on a tear. And they kind of have a 2 or 3 year window where they really want to grow, and you catch them in the window, and they're really gonna their question to us is, hey, what does it take to win? And so we're seeing that a lot. And probably most of the transactions we did, again, probably half of them I guessed right on the buyer, and half of them someone halfway came out of left field and really just blew our socks off. So it's an exciting time, and really kind of got to take a pretty objective approach and really rethink your assumptions almost daily as you're looking at your buyer universe.
Yeah. So from time to time, probably more often than not, we hear from the business owner that says, listen, we have 1 or 2 strategics, but they don't want to participate in a process. They'll only give us this bid if we buy directly from them. What do you tell that business owner?
If you want to sell your business for less than it's worth, go ahead. I mean, the only reason people don't participate in processes is because they know they won't win. And I think the other dynamic that's interesting, and COVID's really put an emphasis on it, is we're seeing bid disparity that I've never seen before. What I mean by bid disparity is if you look at the 4 auctions we ran last year, so of our 6 transactions, 4 were auctions. The difference between the lowest bid and the highest bid was at least double. And in one case, it was 4 times. 4 times. Like,
wow.
One person bid 25, one person bid 100. Same information, same company. And so, it's mind-blowing, even to me to go back and look at that. And the other part of it is in some of the cases, it's not the private equity firm on the bottom, it's the private equity firm on the top. And because what we're seeing is people have a very non-homogeneous view of the future. Some people look at, COVID and they see various risks. Some people look at it and see various opportunities depending on the company. And so you're not getting as a kind of steady a view of the future. And that's how people underwrite the value is what do they think the future of this company is. So, anytime someone says, again, I'm the most strategic buyer, this is what I'll pay, you got to take my deal. I'm not going to mess around. It's bogus. It might be true, but I would question, unless they're in some universe where they're so specialized that no one else wants to touch them, chances are the person's just lowballing you. And even if it looks fair, it doesn't mean it is. And again, I've been equally surprised on value sometimes. We tend not to kind of promise the moon. We had a company that we sold for double what we told the company we thought it was worth last year. And obviously that's a great outcome for everybody. But you just don't know until you go to the market. And I think having worked on the buy side, more in my kind of previous experience at the firm, your objective as a buyer is to get the company as cheaply as possible with as least competition as possible. And so, and because these buyers know how competitive this world is, that's what they're trying to do. And, they really try to, say we're a great home. We're going to do all these wonderful things for you. You don't want to go through a process. It's a big time and hassle. And, it's a self-serving comment. And so not to say they don't always put out an offer that's fantastic, but more often than not, when we see those situations, they're not paying top dollar.
Exactly. Let me pivot a little bit here with the change in the White House and the January 5th runoff in Georgia, allowing the Democrats to get 50 votes in the Senate. Tax policy looms that, gosh, if they end up switching to the tax regime that the Biden campaign put out during as the run up to the election, if they're able to get that through and make it effective for next year, how is that affecting business owners that you talk to? Are they saying, "Oh my gosh, I see that they could potentially double the capital gains rate for people over $1 million"? Do you see that influencing behavior? Eliot, we absolutely need to get a deal done in 2021, or have you really not seen much or heard much around that motivating potential sellers?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'll answer by, there's a reason we closed 4 deals at the end of 2020, and it's because everyone knew that wasn't going to happen in 2020. And so as of right now, that rhetoric is not front and center. They decided to focus on a few other things, but it's February. So I think it has been a factor, people thinking about it, and it's no one's projecting lower taxes, and so any business owner that we're dealing with, it's a factor, and I think for some folks it will push it over the edge, and as soon as that becomes kind of a headline issue, I think we will see a lot of folks run. And I think thing for people to remember, M&A, you can't sell your company in 3 weeks. And so one of the transactions we closed the last week of January, I called the owner in July because we had met in the previous January and said, "Hey, look, if you want to get going, we got to go like now." And we started July 15th, we closed on December 29th, and that was fast. And so if it's something that's on business owners' minds, it's really, I would say, to be safe, you really want to start, seriously considering doing something come, March, April 2021, if you want to, make sure you're done by December, because otherwise you're in a situation where you're kind of begging someone to buy you fast. And again, you really, give up a lot of your leverage by letting everyone know that this tax change is driving you, and they'll try to capture some of that value from you. And we had plenty of buyers do that when we took a company to market in Q4, and we had probably 2 buyers that said, "Look, we'll close in 4 weeks." And they showed us a math problem where, we're going to save in taxes if there's a change in taxes. And, and during the math problem, they're taking half the savings for themselves. And so, you really want to keep control of your process, and you got to give yourself 6 or 7 months just to be safe. So I think we will see, some of that, and especially if the rhetoric starts picking back up.
Fair point. Okay. How do you help businesses who are seeking investment or considering a sale?
First and foremost, we, with our background as CPAs, we both have people out of the audit world and also out of the world of M&A due diligence. I think one thing we're very effective of is helping with them kind of the pre-assessment of where the risks are, and kind of propping them up to a level that they look and feel really clean to the buyer. And so that's why we like to have a little bit extra time on the front end, is really to help them to design a process that's going to meet their objectives, but also spend enough time with their books and their records to make them look and feel like they've been doing things in a slightly a more professional way, if it hasn't been that way for their for their full existence. And sometimes that's something we can do. Sometimes we need to bring in outside experts. But really, I think having a specialty in working with these companies, they're all unique. They all have things they do really well. They all have things that maybe they didn't focus on. And so we really try to identify those things that the buyers are going to pick on, and mitigate them as much as possible, as early as possible, possible, so that when we go to market, that's it's a smoother process.
You want to make them look institutionally investable, right? So that
Yep.
the institution knows, hey, this is something I can invest in, I can count on, and the numbers work and are accurate, and those kind of. Perhaps they've been running it as a family business, more about how does it best serve the family, and now you're trying to change that to more of an institutional mindset. Is that a fair description?
No, it's a very fair description. As I like to say, I like to present something in our materials that looks and feels professional, but when they dig in, I want it to continue to look and feel professional as they go down to kind of the real root of the data. And so again, with our due diligence folks, it's like having an ex-IRS agent on staff for tax purposes. We really kind of make what's under the covers look and feel probably at institutional grade, and just the way we help them present their forecasts and present the value proposition. We really make sure we're kind of have helped the company present that with data, and rehearsed with the company so that they can say and do things in a way that's really more institutionally normal. And there's a lot of lingo and buzzwords that, and if you haven't lived in the world, you don't necessarily use. And we don't need to help reinvent these companies, but if we can coach them and kind of really help behind the scenes to make everything that the buyer looks at look and feel they're buying a publicly held company as much as possible, it goes a long way, because that's one of the biggest disadvantages of these privately held companies. They've never done it before. They're not organized, and the buyers take advantage of that. So we really try to flip that and prepare them so well that we can keep control of the process for everybody.
Great. Let's talk about the headcount at RA Capital and capacity. How many engagements a year is the ideal amount for your current capacity at RA?
Yeah, no, we have a headcount of about 12. We also have an international network that we use to help bring foreign buyers to the table when that is a thing. With COVID, that's hasn't been used as much, but we have about 14 firms around the world that we work with to help connect with various buyers in the important markets around the world. But we like to think of ourselves as low volume, high quality. So we typically will look to do 5 to 7 transactions a year. We're not a brokerage where we're just listing 5 companies a week and hoping we close one. If we take something on, we want to close it, and it needs a lot of senior level attention and focus. And I think that's another thing that I'm really proud of. I've been with the firm 17 years. I have another managing director I've worked with for 16 years. I have a vice president I've worked with for 10 years. Another one I worked with for 8 years. The 2 principals have been there over 20 years. We have a lot of experience, and a lot of experience with each other. And so we really kind of work as a team, and we all decide which transactions we're gonna work on. And part of it is, are we sure we can get this done? Because we don't like failure, and failure means not closing the transaction. So it's and because of all the help our client base needs, we just can't do 20 a year. We really want to do the right thing for the ones we take on.
So if the business owners that are listening today and they're saying, listen, I'm thinking about potentially selling between now and over the next 3 years, and yeah, I see that debt rates are unbelievably cheap. That's really advantageous. Tax rates are really, really cheap, and there is a number of buyers. What are the things that they should do to look at? Should we consider a process this year, or should we put it off for another couple of years? Because I hear from business owners say, look at how fast we're growing. We're growing at 20% a year, or 15% a year. And my comment to them is, do you think you're going to grow faster than the increase in the cost of tax rates and or higher debt prices or fewer buyers? What should those people do to make an informed decision to say, is it wise for me to potentially wait a couple of years and grow the business, or consider a process this year because of economics? What should that business owner do who's listening to the show?
Yeah, it's as much of a personal decision as it is a math problem. And so I think what I like to say is, first, let's look at what you need to believe to your break-even point is. And so if taxes are going up, are you outgrowing that? Yes or no? If making an assumption the market is homogenous and will remain exactly as it is for the next 5 years, that might be good, or it might be not so good. I mean, there's a lot of businesses we knew that just got crushed by COVID that were waiting that extra year, because they were going to grow and then they shrank. And so owners need to keep their objectives in mind and kind of think of the why, because if taxes and, I'd say if we're looking right now, we're in a terrific market. Taxes are probably not going to get any lower. And so I think if they're saying, hey, I'm 2 years out or 3 years out, I think there'd have to be a pretty compelling reason to keep putting it off. Because again, the market is the one thing you can't control. And sometimes the market just shuts down. I mean, I remember, 2008, 2009, I was golfing every day. I mean, there was nothing to do, and because there's nobody doing deals, and we were all expecting that might happen. Again, the pandemic, and thankfully, that only lasted about 3 months. But owners really got to be inward looking there and say, hey, what are my objectives? Why am I doing this? Because we've seen all sorts of things derail the I'm going to do it in 2 years plan, whether it's their health, health of employees or spouses, tax policy, but most of all capital markets. Sometimes the market window's open, sometimes the market window's closed.
Is it fair to say that this is the best sellers market you've seen in your career?
Yes, it's especially for the lower middle market companies, because what's happened with these private equity firms is that it used to be they only wanted things with 10 or 15 in EBITDA, and then I kind of joke they're like amoebas, they split every 5 years. And so
just to clarify, 10 to 15 million in profits, they were only considering those kinds of transactions previously?
Correct. Yeah, and that by previously I mean call it 10, 12 years ago. But as time has gone by, as some of these, kind of the people that didn't make partner at those firms, they'd go raise a smaller fund who would look at 5 million. And then the person who didn't make partner at the 5 million fund would go raise a fund that, focused on 3 million. So you've really created a lot of liquidity at the lower end of the market. And I think that's really kind of, created a lot of opportunities. And on the flip side, because of what we talked about, previously, all these new private equity platforms, you have just a tremendous amount of strategic buyers that are backed by private equity funds, where acquisitions is a major part of their strategy. So the liquidity is just something I've never seen before, and and the low debt rates are highly beneficial to these buyers.
Fantastic information, Eliot. I want to thank you very, very much for coming on the show. If you're a business owner and listening to this and want to get in touch with Eliot, can you share how best for that individual to contact you?
Yeah, no, you can. Our website is raca.com, Roger Apple, Charlie Apple. My contact information is there. My email is epeters@raca.com. And the firm's phone number, my phone number is on the website. So we're always happy to just talk to folks and understand their situation. And, even if they're not looking to do something, this moment or in the near future, we have a lot of conversations and try to steer people in the right direction. So happy to talk to any of the listeners here.
Eliot, thank you so very much for your time. Eric, thank you for putting this all on for us. You want to close us here today?
Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, great job today. Eliot, thank you so much for coming on the show. What great information. Derek, I've got to say that as I was listening to you and Eliot talk, I was just kind of reflecting back on a lot of the podcasts that you guys have been putting out. And some of them have been, hey, here's some things to watch out for because this could affect you negatively. And you've brought so many positive things too. That's what I really like, is that I keep hearing from you and your team that there are things that people can do to better their situation. We're not taking advantage of a pandemic. What we're doing is realizing there are things that are being put in place, whether it's law changes, things like that experts like Eliot come on this show and share with the audience so they can be prepared to take advantage of their own personal situation. So thank you so much for bringing this information to the audience, Derek.
Thank you, Eliot. And Eric, thank you very much as always.
Yep, absolutely. It's a pleasure being here. And our last thank you always goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Live Life Liberated podcast with the team from Centura Wealth Advisory. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when they come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening today. From everyone at Centura Wealth Advisory, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Live Life Liberated podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Centura Wealth Advisory. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Centura Wealth Advisory. Centura is an SEC-registered investment advisor with its principal place of business in San Diego, California. Centura and its representatives are in compliance with the current registration and notice filing requirements imposed on SEC-registered investment advisors, in which Centura maintains clients. Centura may only transact business in those states in which it is notice filed or qualifies for an exemption or exclusion from notice filing requirements. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Tax relief varies based on client circumstances, and all clients do not achieve the same results.